The pen is mightier than the sword. After all, words can cut directly to someone's heart. So imagine the power of those words if you could pluck them right out of someone else's mouth and then rocket them directly at another person. As your boat pulls into port, you arrive in a land already thrown into turmoil thanks to poor choices of words. Great God Grove is where a mix of deities live close to their subjects, and King, the god of communication, has mysteriously gone missing. Before he vanished, he left letters within each realm sowing discord between the gods, with both one another and their subjects. To make matters worse, this disarray comes on the precipice of disaster. Once a generation, a rift opens above the grove that can ascend someone to join the pantheon. Yet, if the gods don't come together to close it afterwards, it risks ripping all of reality apart. It's up to you, Godpoke, to get people talking to one another again. And how will you do this? Well, your magical suction cannon called the megaphone, of course. It's not the first time developer Limbo Lane has let players loose into a world full of strange rules with the task of bringing a community back together. Back in the fantastic Smile for Me, you had to cheer up residents by nodding and shaking your head. Great God Grove has a similar structure, with you talking to people in each area to help solve what ails them, but using speech bubbles as items. It's sort of like a point-and-click adventure game, except your dialogue tree and inventory are one and the same. Your options constantly changing as you hoover up special highlighted parts of their dialogue that you can then keep inside your Megaphone's chamber before shooting them out. The head nodding and shaking system from Smile for Me returns as well. Great God Grove is split into third-person and first-person sections. Usually it's the former, but when you enter the chamber of a deity, it switches the perspective, emphasising just how overwhelmingly large the presence of each god is. Here, you can blast them with speech bubbles, using remarks from other people to query aspects of their unique domain or ask for elaboration on the people's wishes. You can also just move your noggin. Joining you throughout your quest is Inspector and his busy boys. Inspector is the god of leadership, and his divine chamber is located in a big van, meaning he's always watching and ready to brief you on each new bit of drama between levels. The busy boys are essentially living puppets who cause more mischief than good. These guys are literal helping hands. Still, they give the world some exposition via some quite funny, mixed media live-action puppet shows that you can uncover in each level. While only some parts of a conversation are actually, suckable, there is an abundance of options, so it doesn't feel too on rails. Plenty of speech bubbles can be used to just add some colour. You can see how people react to some offbeat remarks, or just tell you more about the subject to clue you into a better use of the phrase. Handily, if the phrase isn't a puzzle solution, you'll be able to suck it back up to use again too. At its best, Great God Grove is about untangling a web of everyone's desires to ultimately make the realm a better place. Mildread, the second location you reach, is home to Cobbergale, the god of the harvest. But misinformation spread by King has divorced the people from the harvest rituals they used to observe, making their crops fallow and leaving everyone, Cobbergale included, forgetful of how things used to be. Scrabbling for solutions, where even human sacrifice is an option, has you picking your way through some quirky characters to access new locations in the rural town. You piece together little memories of better days and use them to jog the memory of others. Using the townsfolk's memories as opposed to your own words really helps create the sense that you're guiding a community on a better path under their own steam, rather than just rocking into town as a cowboy-booted saviour all on your own. Yet, few locations manage to match up to this relatively early one. There's only really 4 in total, with one of those being a tutorial. The human sacrifice element is high stakes. The colours of Mildred's perpetual sunset are striking, and the way you move back and forth through locations in the small town makes the mission progression feel like it builds upon itself. Each subsequent location juggles 2 gods at once, in realms that have communities and ideologies that aren't always aligned. But rather than add more conflict, these areas can feel spread thin as a result. Hobby Who has a writer and an editor god, the former having their own Woodstock-like stage theatre area and the latter an urban downtown zone. But while a wedge has been driven between them, the conflict feels fairly weak. Each space has fun characters as well, but they're more brief detours to suck up what you need rather than particularly strong in their own right. The same goes for the following level that introduces the concept of an artistic revolutionary group, only to have them give you a series of quite fetch-questy missions. Fairly brief, Great God Grove doesn't outstay its welcome, and its great gimmick remains novel throughout. Even when you're solving some less satisfying and more basic puzzles, you're always doing so in a way few other games have ever allowed you to do. Peaking early in its structure though, you do spend the back half of the game probing with your vacuum for anything that will feel as good. While the conclusion to the story is satisfying and emotional, it just sort of happens without making you work all too much for it. This is another wonderfully innovative twist on a narrative-first adventure game from Limbo Lane, and I can't wait to see what they do next. The highs in Great God Grove as you bounce between some wonderfully visualised characters who are all offbeat in their own ways will stick with you. Each animated to flip between strong keyframes without much in-between movement, Great God Grove has a striking and high-impact sense of style. In comparison, what you're doing can end up feeling much tamer, but it certainly doesn't suck. But what do you think? Does Great God Grove look like a game you're going to pick up? Let us know in the comments and follow GamesRadar for more reviews, previews and more.